This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My name is Haley. In the 5-star hotel, wrapped in a bath towel and about to bend over to check the water temperature in the bathtub. The next second, a pair of large hands yanked me into the tub. Before I could react, the towel in front of me was ripped off. At that moment, someone under the bubbles was pressing a knife against my abdomen. With a bang, the door burst open. Ma'am, we're with the police conducting a routine check.
What?
We received a tip-off that a suspect entered this hotel. Have you seen any suspicious individuals? A group of plainclothes officers, holding guns and flashing their badges in front of me, entered the room.
Oh no!
The bubbles in the tub perfectly concealed the danger I was in. But I couldn't dare make any distress signals. I feared I might die in the tub before I could call for help. Ma'am, can you hear me? Seeing that I wasn't responding, one of them asked again. I could feel the knife pressing deeper into my flesh. In a panic, I shouted. There's no one here. It's just you suddenly bursting into my room. Don't you see I'm taking a bath? Get out now. They could see how awkward my situation was. Soon, they left my room, as no one would expect the culprit to be hiding in my bathtub. After the police left, I felt my life was hanging by a thread, missing the only chance to survive. I knew it. I, Haley, have never had good fortune in my life, so why would I suddenly hit the jackpot this time? It turned out there was a much greater disaster waiting for me. In those brief seconds, as I recalled my short and unlucky life, the culprit had already emerged from the tub. Probably because he had been holding his breath for so long, he took deep breaths after getting out of the water. A minute later, he stood in front of me, his breathing steady. Your actions earlier were wise, otherwise, you'd be a corpse by now. My body was frozen in terror, unable to move. It was a feat to remain somewhat rational under such extreme fear. I'm just a tourist who won a prize. I don't know anything. Can you please not hurt me? I kept my mind clear, begging him to spare me. At this point, it didn't matter whether I was exposed or not. Seeing me shaking uncontrollably, he took a towel from the nearby cabinet and tossed it in front of me. Wrap this around yourself and come out. But I couldn't get out of the tub, my whole body was as stiff as a rock. Do you want me to carry you out? His tone was harsh, and I was terrified of provoking him, especially since he was a fugitive being pursued by the police. Okay, I'm coming out now. I forced myself to stand up and clumsily climbed out of the tub. Yes, I had to crawl out. I couldn't predict what he would do next. Would he silence me, given that I saw his face? He remained expressionless, staring at me like prey. As he moved closer, I noticed that this criminal had an exceptionally striking appearance. His face was too perfect, and he stood over 6 feet tall with a powerful presence. Upon closer inspection, I could see various small knife scars on his face, especially around his brow area, giving off a dangerous vibe. He undressed, revealing a well-built body, his muscular lines adding an irresistible allure. I lowered my head, not daring to look at him. At this moment, I was left with only a bath towel, completely naked otherwise. Come over here, he said. I had no choice but to obediently walk over. Despite my fear, I was even more afraid of dying. Help me with the wound on my back. He asked me to stand behind him. If I wasn't mistaken, there was a gunshot wound on his back. I had seen such wounds on TV before. You have an infection in your wound and need an antiseptic, but I don't have any here. During this trip, I had done quite a bit of research on how to handle injuries while traveling. His eyes turned sharp. What's this? Trying to use this as an excuse to buy medicine and call the police? No, I don't dare. But how should I deal with this wound? Call the front desk and ask for a bottle of alcohol. You know what to say. Under his watchful gaze, I dialed the hotel's front desk and asked for a bottle of alcohol. Before I opened the door, he warned me that if I tried anything funny, he would make me regret it. I believed him without a doubt. In a foreign place, if I were to die here, no one would come to collect my body. Once the server delivered the alcohol and left, I closed the door, feeling dejected. When I turned around, I was startled to see that he now had a gun in his hand, pointed directly at me. I was relieved that my earlier weakness had saved me, otherwise, he would have certainly shot me. "You've got the alcohol. What should I do now?" I could handle minor injuries, but I'd never dealt with a gunshot wound before. He instructed me to remove the bullet from the wound on his left shoulder using only my hands. He bit down on a towel to stifle any sounds. Under my clumsy and rough handling, his pain must have been doubled. With a click, I placed the bullet into a crystal cup on the table. He was sweating profusely, clearly in pain. I was also sweating coldly, out of fear. This must have been the weakest moment for him. I thought, if I now grabbed that cup and hit him with it, he might faint. Just as I was about to reach for the cup, he suddenly spun around and pinned me beneath him, pressing my hands against the sofa. "With such petty tricks, you think you can ambush me?" My hands were painfully squeezed, and tears almost spilled out. I didn't mean to. I was just a bit thirsty and wanted some water. "You're too sensitive," I protested, genuinely close to tears, with my eyes reddening. He relented and let go of me. "Help me over there." He pointed toward the bed, indicating that I should help him to rest. Given the earlier incident, I dared not have any other ideas and carefully helped him to the bed. Just as I was about to let go, he pulled me onto the bed and told me, "Don't wander around. Sleep next to me." He deliberately placed the gun on the pillow, within my reach. I truly didn't understand his actions. Was he testing me? I dared not move recklessly and lay beside him, with his arm draped over me. At 3 a.m., he suddenly woke up after sleeping for about 4 hours. I had been wide awake the entire time, unable to sleep. Quite obedient. "Find me a pen and a piece of paper." His first words upon waking. "Can I use an eyebrow pencil?" I asked cautiously. He nodded. In just a few hours, his condition seemed to improve significantly. He took the eyebrow pencil and began drawing symbols and markings on the paper that I couldn't understand. "Tomorrow morning, send this paper to this address under your name." He gave me an address. Before I could ask what it was for, he interrupted. "Don't ask anything. The less you know, the better." It sounded like both a warning and an inexplicable form of protection, and I couldn't quite understand why I felt that way. He then dressed in his half-dried dark suit, took the gun, and jumped out of my window. Before leaving, he emphasized that the paper was very important and must not be lost. And just like that, he left my room, from the 8th floor, as if I had no idea how he had gotten in. After he left, I quickly locked all the windows, terrified that he might regret his decision and come back to kill me. I was desperately hoping for daylight to arrive quickly. I needed to leave this city as soon as possible, the city that almost cost me my life. Finally, after 3 hours, I saw light and hope emerging from the window. I hurried downstairs to check out, thinking that my first priority was to head back home. As for the important note left by that man, of course, I would hand it over to the police once I got back. Providing a lead on such a criminal would be a good deed. I told myself that as long as I left this city, everything would return to normal. Out of the 7 days of this trip, I had only spent 2 days enjoying myself. I had no desire to work for the remainder of the vacation. I just wanted to go home, sleep for several days, and forget this horrifying experience. The next day after returning home, I showed up at the police station, wrapped up like a mummy. I approached a young officer and quietly asked, "Who is in charge here? Can I speak with them?" "Ma'am, is there something you need to report? What I experienced is quite special. Please take me to your superior." Seeing my anxious demeanor, the young officer, though skeptical, took me to meet his superior. As luck would have it, Deputy Officer S. was in the office that day. I entered his office, explained my purpose, and handed over the crucial information left by the criminal. Upon seeing the information on the paper, Officer S.'s face showed shock. He then made a phone call, mentioning phrases like Black Wolf, N7 Plan, and Major Breakthrough, along with some terms I didn't fully understand. Confused, I asked, "Aren't you going to apprehend him immediately? He's injured. With this information, shouldn't you be able to catch him quickly?" Officer S came to me and said something that left me completely stunned. "Young lady, thank you for risking your life to bring us this information. On behalf of the people, I thank you." The words that followed from Officer S were all heard, but I wished I had never learned them. Although I had a slight sense of justice, it wasn't much, and yet I had inadvertently played a significant role. Many things still didn't make sense to me, and I was unsure how I eventually left the police station. On my way home, my mind raced uncontrollably. So, the person I encountered must be someone of significant importance. Likely a key figure in some organization, and I had inadvertently become the messenger. He must have known I would go to the police station and anticipated my actions. What if I had discarded the information? The thought was terrifying. On the bright side, at least I wasn't in immediate danger. The person I encountered wasn't a terrorist. Just as I reached the bottom of my building, a van with glaring headlights appeared in my view. The blinding light made it impossible for me to see clearly. Before I could react, I was knocked unconscious and taken away. I had no idea how long I had been asleep during the ride. When I woke up, I vaguely heard someone talking. I knew from the start that fifth brother was problematic. I caught him this time. Let's see if father still trusts him. That's right, second brother. Why should he boss you around? He's only been with father for a few years, while you've been with him since you were a teenager. I felt extremely dizzy and weak, unable to even scream for help. I was in a terrible situation, having just thought I had narrowly escaped danger. Before I even reached my home, I had been kidnapped. Escaping this situation seemed like a mere dream. The vehicle jolted, making me nauseous. During the ride, one of the men on the van had ill intentions towards me. However, he quickly lost interest as I became increasingly disheveled, alternating between needing to pee and throwing up. What kind of bad luck is this, thinking of touching that cursed woman? The man chuckled, sounding rather dim-witted. Boss, this woman looks quite attractive, but she seems a bit slow-witted. Is fifth brother into this type? Whether she's truly foolish or not, once we get to father, there are ways to make her talk. I couldn't bear to think about what was going to happen next. Time had passed, perhaps 5 or 6 hours. I had lost track of the exact time, only knowing that I was starving and thirsty. The vehicle stopped. I was thrown out of the car, my head covered with a black sack, leaving me disoriented. But my consciousness was gradually returning, probably as the effects of the drug wore off. Rebecca, keep an eye on this woman while I go find father. Rebecca, after the leader left, pulled off the sack from my head. I found myself in a dilapidated warehouse, surrounded by metal walls. The man, who seemed to have an unsettling interest in me, leered with a disgusting expression. Hey, girl, are you hungry? Why don't you just give in to me, and I'll make sure you get a good meal before you die. What? Does he mean I'm going to die? Despair washed over me. I knew these people were connected to that man. Who are you? Still playing dumb? You're Rocky's informant. Now that you're in my boss's hands, you're as good as dead. So, his name is Rocky, though I suspected it wasn't his real name. I continued to pretend not to understand, but I grasped why they had brought me here. It seemed the only person who might save me now was him. Just then, a figure darted past the warehouse entrance. In an instant, the man in front of me was knocked out with a single punch. The figure wore a hat and a black mask, so I couldn't see his face, but he felt oddly familiar. It's you. Are you here to save me? I clung to him like a lifeline. Remember every word I say next. He then explained what I would face and how to handle it. He also mentioned that even if he took me away now, I would be captured again. Before leaving, he handed me an object, instructing me to place it on the person who had captured me. It could be crucial for survival in a critical moment. I nodded vigorously, knowing this was my only chance to take a gamble. An hour later, the leader returned. Seeing his men lying on the ground, he kicked one of them. Rebecca, woken by the pain, groaned. "Boss, what happened to me?" Seeing me also unconscious, the leader cursed. "Did you do something to her?" "No, boss, I was about to, but before I could do anything, I lost consciousness." Without further discussion, the leader ordered his men to put me in the car. I knew this destination was likely to be dangerous, so I followed his plan. Soon, I was dragged before someone. As the man dragged me, I seized the opportunity and secretly slipped the object into his pocket. I continued to feign unconsciousness until a bottle of strong liquor was poured over my face, causing me to cough uncontrollably. "Not dead yet? Get up and respond." When I looked up, I met eyes that were horrifying. It felt like facing death itself, a powerful sense of suffocation making it hard to breathe. The man appeared to be in his 50s, with silver hair. The most terrifying part was that he had only one eye, half of his face looked like a mask. "Tom, is this the informant you mentioned?" The old man looked at me with a hint of murderous intent. "Father, I saw this woman in contact with the police. She was released by Rocky himself. Do you have proof?" Little Five returned gravely injured and still managed a big deal. Who should I believe? The old man clearly trusted no one. At that moment, he appeared. This time, he looked even more imposing. His arrival silenced everyone present. Only I began to scream frantically. "You heartless wretch, you put on your pants and then refused to take responsibility. I tell you, you won't be able to get rid of me wherever you go. I've already reported myself missing today." Suddenly, everyone in the room turned to look at Rocky, their faces full of disbelief. "William, what's the deal with this woman?" the old man asked in a casual tone. He walked up to the person who had brought me here, his eyes fierce. "Tom, you've really grown some guts. You dare to touch anyone's people. Rocky, don't think I don't know what you've done. This woman is a cop." As soon as the word cop was spoken, everyone in the room unconsciously reached for their lower backs. The old man waved his hand, signaling not to make any rash moves. "William, explain what's going on." The old man's expression began to change subtly. "Dad, if you believe him, you can deal with me directly." Saying that, he took out his gun and placed it on the mahogany table beside the old man. The person who had brought me here was almost laughing, with a smug look on his face. The old man pondered for a moment, touched his prosthetic face, looked at Rocky again, picked up the gun, and pointed it at me. My courage was about to break, and my teeth couldn't help but chatter. His calmness made me feel like I wouldn't make it through the night. He just stood there steadily, with no intention of stopping. The old man didn't pull the trigger, but pointed the gun at me and said, "Call the police station with your phone." On speaker. I remembered what he had told me before, that if I needed to talk to the police, I should cough before speaking. After the call was connected, I coughed lightly first, which was a normal reaction and no one noticed anything was wrong. "Officer, I'm the one who reported a missing case to find my boyfriend during the day. I've just found him, so I won't trouble you guys." "Ms. M.O., right? I remember you were crying to us all day. It's good that you found him." The other party answered as if the case I reported was just a disappearance. After hanging up the phone, I looked at Rocky with a grievance and continued to complain. "It's all because of you. I don't care who you really are. I am yours in life and your ghost in death. Anyway, I've made up my mind to follow you." He ignored me and just waited quietly for the old man to speak. All of this was taught to me by him. He wanted me to act as a woman crazy for love, the more realistic the better. Before the old man could speak, the person who had brought me here couldn't sit still. "Dad, Rocky definitely has a problem. This woman and him won't be so simple." The old man picked up the teacup on the table and smashed it on the ground. "Tom, you are brothers. I know you have opinions on William. Let this matter go, release the person." This person was not convinced, rushed to me in a rage, his hands forcefully pinching my neck. "Stupid woman. Not talking, right? Believe it or not, I'll strangle you now. I finally caught the opportunity, waving my hands around, pulling out the thing I had just stuffed into his pocket. It was a very special ring. The moment the ring fell to the ground, the old man's face changed dramatically. It seems that this thing is very important to him. And at this moment, I have not been relieved from the crisis. I am about to be unable to breathe, my whole face is red. In a trance, I seemed to see my grandmother. The old lady had already opened her arms to welcome me. He also finally rushed over at the moment when the ring fell to the ground. He kicked the person who was strangling me away. This kick was either dead or disabled. The old man picked up the ring from the ground. His expression was complicated. It turned out that the ring belonged to the old man's own daughter, who died 3 years ago during a mission. This ring was equipped with an exquisite positioning system, made personally by the old man for his daughter. The purpose was to protect his daughter, so that no matter what the circumstances, she could be found at the first moment. However, before the transaction 3 years ago, the ring disappeared. After the mission was supposed to end, the girl was going to marry Rocky. Unexpectedly, during that cargo transport, they fell into a police ambush. In the end, it was Rocky who came back alone, holding her body. Tom and Jack were also part of that mission. Jack was shot on the spot and died from severe injuries. Tom saw the situation was bad and ran away, and it was because of that incident that the old man no longer trusted Tom as before. This has always been a heart knot for the old man, and today to see this thing appear on him. The old man no longer wanted to hear a word from him. This ring directly determined who was the culprit back then. Tom, who was thrown on the ground, was also bewildered. How could this thing be on him? Tom just wanted to say something for himself, when a gunshot rang. Tom fell to the ground, bright red blood gushing out. The old man shot him directly, without giving him a chance to speak. This is the old man's eternal pain, no one can. My stomach instantly churned. This was the first time I had ever seen someone killed. I tightly covered my own mouth, not daring to let myself scream. Rocky walked to the old man's side. "Dad, are you okay?" "Kitty, the person who betrayed you, Dad has found. I have let him go down and apologize to you personally." The old man gently patted Rocky's shoulder. "Take her away, I'm tired." After saying that, everyone in the room followed the old man and left. He also came to me, looking at me trembling all over. "Rest assured, it's over." He picked me up and took me to his place. I really couldn't walk alone this time. My legs were so soft that I couldn't stand up at all. Just now, in order to survive, I had exhausted all the acting skills in my life. Soon he took me to his place, a place that looked like you could enter but not leave. The guard was tight, and I'm afraid not even a fly could fly in at the door. He carried me to his bedroom. I was a bit puzzled. I was about to ask him something. I only saw him say something seriously. "Wife, you love me so much, I will fulfill you, tonight will be good to you." He made a false gesture to me. I didn't dare to talk nonsense again. I understand this, since I knew his real identity. Now looking at him is full of security. But he really doesn't look like a good person. I saw him take my waist with one hand, carry me up and throw me on the bed. Then he covered me and him with a quilt. He whispered in my ear in a very low voice. "There are surveillance and eavesdropping in the room, cooperate with me." The warm breath from the side of his lips fell on the tip of my ear, making my face a little hot instantly. I nodded. Then he said romantic words while letting me keep on making moaning sounds. In order not to be seen through, he deliberately took off his upper clothes, and I had to bite the bullet and throw out my underwear. The sound in the room was so embarrassing that it made people blush and heart race. This play lasted for more than an hour, and my mouth was dry and my throat was almost hoarse. After the sound subsided, I went to the bathroom with him. He turned his back, allowing me to take a hot shower. We came out together, turned off the lights, and returned to the bed. Lying there awkwardly side by side, though it wasn't the first time. Actually, I had many questions I wanted to ask him, so with a sudden idea, I leaned over and pulled his hand towards me, writing a few words on his palm. Will I be okay? He turned over, took my hand, and wrote in my palm. I'm sorry, I dragged you into this. You knew I would go to the police, didn't you? Yep. Don't worry, I'll do my best to protect you. Knowing he would do his utmost to protect me, I felt much relieved. How many years have you been in Undercover? You really do look like a bad guy. 7 years, let's talk about serious matters. He didn't continue these topics with me but asked about the police's next steps. I told him truthfully, but I didn't know much. That police officer S just told me that if I could see him again, to tell him to act according to his plan. All the marked points on the icons will be taken out one by one. Also, he needs to protect himself. We've been out of contact for a year, and the comrades in the team were very worried about him. We finished all the necessary talk by writing in our palms. Finally, he told me to follow him closely these days, and he would find a way to let me back out safely. Following him during this time, I lived every day on tenterhooks. Perhaps because I've been unlucky since I was a child, I've developed a lot of stress resistance. My company and family, the police also went and explained to them simply after I made the call. Now my identity is awkward. If this is not successful, I may die honorably. If it's successful, I won't be known to people, except that the justice in my heart will be sublimated into a sense of national honor. At that time, I would also be a person who has made contributions to the country. I can be considered a small general among the countless nameless heroes. In the afternoon, he took the opportunity to tell me, "Tonight I'm going to the venue to collect the bill, you follow me then. I've let the news out, there will be police to check the people, and you will be honest and caught, don't worry about me." He also specifically instructed that no matter what happens, don't worry about him, he can handle it. It can be heard that this is his opportunity to let me back out completely. Because he mentioned it to me before. In a month, everything will be over, they are about to close the net, and there will be a fierce battle at that time. He is afraid that he will have no time to take care of me. If I can escape successfully today, he will also protect me completely. But, you know, I've been very unlucky since I was a child, where can there be smoothness to speak of? At night, I followed him to that nightclub, people here see him and hate him to the bone, it feels very different from the previous times. I have a bad premonition, it should not be difficult to guess what the situation of these people is, after all, he is also a famous ruthless role on the road. Whose people would come up to him with such a big malice, and before waiting for a few words, a group of people came up and started to move directly. I've seen his skills, I'm not worried about what he will do, and he also reminded me that I shouldn't worry about him no matter what happens. I saw him fighting against a dozen people, always taking the upper hand. At this time, a person on the ground got up, and I saw that he was holding a bag of powdery things in his hand. I realized that things were not good, if that thing was sprinkled on Rocky's face, and he inhaled it once, he would be finished. At this moment, I couldn't think too much, and I shouted directly, "Rocky, be careful on the right." This sound of mine didn't actually play a big role, and when I shouted for him to be careful, he dodged the attack of that person at the same time. At this time, the police also rushed in, and the scene was in chaos. And I didn't know that there was another person staring at me in the dark. Rocky was not injured, and after seeing the police coming in, he took a look at me and left. But I never thought that before the police caught me, I was taken away by someone else first. The person who took me away was Tom's wife, who has been doing the flesh business these years. Back then, Tom took her out, did not dislike her, and even married her as his wife. When she knew that it was because of me that her man died, to take revenge on Rocky, and to avenge her man. She had been waiting here for a long time, Rocky calculated thousands of times, but he didn't expect that woman to wait for me here. When I woke up again, I saw a few burly men in front of me. I have a strong discomfort in my body, my head is very dizzy, and my whole body bones are painful. I determined one thing, I have been violated by 3 people. Her purpose is to torture me to death, and she thinks killing me is a favor to me. I not only didn't escape, but also fell into the hands of the enemy and suffered this humiliation. In the middle of the night, several times I just wanted to die. But I didn't even have the strength to kill myself, and I could only let life wither away bit by bit. She saw that I was about to die, and specially called Rocky. She never intended for us both to survive. This woman is insane. After receiving the call, Rocky single-handedly fought his way to where I was trapped. The route to get here must have been incredibly difficult. When I saw him, his body and face were covered in blood, and I couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. When he saw me, barely clinging to life, the murderous rage in his eyes softened into concern and guilt. Perhaps he felt it was his fault for getting me into this situation, and it was indeed true. If I hadn't met him, I wouldn't have ended up in such disaster. This time, he was thoroughly enraged. To rescue me, he killed many villains. He certainly didn't spare the last woman. Perhaps this mad woman had also realized that tonight would be either her death or his. He was already blinded by fury. Now I understand where his notorious reputation as a ruthless figure came from. Witnessing his madness, I felt numb. My heart had died, and I no longer knew what fear or terror felt like. He fought his way through the darkness, and finally appeared in front of me, seeing me barely conscious. He took off his blood-stained coat and draped it over me. I remember him repeatedly saying to me, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I'm here. I'll take you away." I only felt immense pain and exhaustion. I couldn't say a word but could still hear his voice. His voice was so soothing, I wished I could hear it forever. Fearing I might fall asleep, he made me a promise. "Haley, I won't let you give up. Listen to me, if I survive, I'll marry you." Did you hear that? He spoke many words to me as he carried me. Every time I tried to close my eyes, his voice rang in my ears. This was the most he had ever spoken to me. He wanted me to wait for him, to live, and that he would marry me. I managed a weak smile, and then I no longer heard his voice. It felt like I had a very long dream. When I woke up again, I was lying in a hospital's intensive care unit. Beside me were my family and 2 police officers. "Haley, you're awake. How are you feeling?" The first person I saw was my mother. She looked much more haggard. I had made her worry. I always caused her trouble, and I wasn't a good daughter. But this time, my mother cried and told me she was proud of me. After this life-threatening ordeal, I didn't have any thoughts of ending my life. I just wanted to live well. Surviving was so hard, and my life had been saved by him. I had no reason to give up, but would he survive? The 2 police officers asked me a few questions to understand what had happened during that time. They expressed their deep respect for me. They also told me that recently, the police would send someone to protect me in secret, and they would notify me when the Black Wolf mission was over. I want to know, what is his real name? Since I met him, I never asked his real name. I was afraid I wouldn't know what to call him if I met him again. They didn't tell me, only saying everything would be revealed after the mission was completed. Indeed, for people with their special identities, if their real names were discovered, it would endanger their whole family. I stayed in the hospital for half a month, and my condition slowly improved. This ordeal left me with significant psychological trauma. I had the same nightmare every night. In the dreams, the scenes of being assaulted by those beasts were vividly clear, and I woke up in tears several times. After being discharged, I underwent several psychological interventions. There was some effect, but it wasn't significant. However, every time I thought of his final words to me, I gained the courage to face myself. I counted the days every day, thinking that in another half-month, I might be able to see him. I always remembered how he saved me after my accident. He was like a light reflected from the abyss, pulling me back to life. I admit that when he said he wanted to marry me, my heart came back to life. Regardless of whether he was sincere or not, I was grateful to him. If someone asked me if I ever hated him, I would say no. When I learned he had been undercover for 7 years, I felt nothing. But during the time I spent with him, I understood what he had been through and what he had borne. I admired him from the bottom of my heart. He aimed to save countless families. Compared to those unnamed heroes who lost their lives, my sacrifice was fortunate. Strangely, after experiencing this event, my luck began to turn around. Everything I did went smoothly. After my health improved, I returned to work. Difficult clients I used to deal with were gone, and I received a salary increase and a promotion. Everything related to bad luck seemed to be moving away from me. Even a lottery ticket I picked up randomly won me $5,000. My bad luck turned into good luck, which was quite unexpected. Days passed, and soon a month had gone by. He still hadn't made any contact. After dinner one evening, I was at home watching TV with my parents. As my dad was flipping through channels with the remote, a news flash caught my eye. I quickly grabbed the remote and switched back to the news channel. The broadcast reported, California police have quickly solved a major drug case within 24 hours. They dismantled the largest drug trafficking ring in the state. 19 suspects were apprehended, with 5 killed or arrested on the spot. Seized were 7 kilograms of heroin, 2,000 grams of methamphetamine, over 1,000 ecstasy pills, and 300 illegal firearms. The case is still under further investigation. The key point was that Rocky's name appeared on the list of those killed on the spot. I felt a sudden pressure in my chest. How could he be dead? He can't be dead. He promised he would come back. It was already night, and I couldn't think of anything else. I dialed the high-ranking police officer's number immediately. He had visited me in the hospital and left his number with me. Hello, officer, this is Haley. Please tell me, is it true that Rocky has been in an accident? There was a 2-second pause on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, he was killed in the line of duty. It's impossible, I don't believe it. He's so skilled, how could he die? The officer didn't say anything more, only advising me to forget it and live well. I had barely survived, and now he was gone. I hung up and sat alone in my room, crying uncontrollably. Why? Why did you let this happen, God? What have you done? A week later, I didn't attend his memorial service. I refused to think about his death. I kept myself busy with work, something I had never done before. I started watching various comedies and variety shows, trying to distract myself. Even so, I never truly felt happy. I tried many things. Every day seemed to go smoothly, with good things happening one after another. But I never smiled again. I lived like this for another 2 months. Recently, my mother noticed my condition and was very worried. She kept saying I should find someone to take care of me. This morning, she told me directly. Haley, a friend of mine mentioned a young man. He seems like a good person. You should meet him if you have the time. I had no interest in it. Mom, I don't want to meet him. I'm fine, don't worry. Seeing my firm attitude, my mom didn't insist any further. At work, I opened my computer as usual, and a message popped up anonymously. Before I could open it, a colleague, Cece, called out. Haley, there's a man downstairs looking for you. Who could it be? Could it be the matchmaker my mom mentioned? I was about to refuse, but then thought it might not be polite. So I decided to go downstairs, otherwise, I'd get scolded when I got home. I went downstairs, but saw no one. How strange, where was the man Cece mentioned? Oh well, it's not my fault if he left early. I turned to head back inside. As I looked up, I froze in place. The person in front of me, he had really come back. Hello Haley. I'm Radley, nice to meet you. The weather was exceptionally clear today. We stood face to face in the sunlight, both wearing long-lost smiles. And that was the end of the story.